truth is bitter, but it must be spoken, especially when silence becomes a second crime. In the years that followed Sri Lanka's civil war, while the nation celebrated the end of one conflict, another was quietly taking shape in the shadows. Beneath the banners of victory and patriotism, a darker current surged, one driven by fear, nationalism, and unchecked extremism. Today, we step into that uneasy twilight between war and peace, to confront a chapter many would rather forget: the racially charged attacks on Sri Lankan Muslims by Sinhala extremist groups during the Rajapaksha regime from 2009 to 2014. This is not a story of isolated violence, but of a system that allowed hatred to grow, unchallenged and unrestrained. The Illusion of Peace, 2009. The guns fell silent in May 2009. After nearly 3 decades of civil war, Sri Lanka stood at a crossroads. The Rajapaksha government celebrated victory over the LTTE, promising unity, reconstruction, and a new era of peace. But beneath the surface, a different storm was gathering. As the Tamil population reeled from the trauma of war, a new target emerged in the Sinhala Buddhist nationalist imagination: the Muslim community. Scholars later described this shift as the creation of another other, a new enemy to sustain ethno-nationalist mobilization in a post-war landscape. Rise of extremist movements, 2011 to 2012. With the war no longer available as a rallying point, hardline monks and nationalist activists began constructing a narrative of Muslim threat to Sinhala culture, to Buddhism, to the nation itself. 2 groups rose to prominence. Bodha Bala Sena, BBS, led by Venerable Galagoda Adhyana Sarathiro. Sinhala Ravaya, Reverend Ikmimana Dayarathana Thiro, President/Chairman. Shalika Lakpriya Pereira, General Secretary. Ravana Balaya, Venerable Itakanda Sadatissa Thiro, also known as Itakanda Sandatissa, Leader/Convener. These organizations used mass rallies, social media, and public intimidation to spread anti-Muslim rhetoric. Their speeches warned of Islamic expansion, demographic takeover, and economic domination, claims with no factual basis but immense emotional power. International observers and local academics noted that these groups operated with remarkable impunity, often in the presence of police who did not intervene. The Sinhala movement was not a militant group like BBS, Sinhala Ravaya, or Ravana Balaya, but it played a powerful symbolic role in the same ecosystem of Sinhala Buddhist nationalism. Emerging prominently around 2013 to 2015, it used slogans, stickers, and social media to promote a majoritarian identity that framed Sri Lanka as belonging exclusively to Sinhala Buddhists. While it did not organize violence, the movement helped normalize the rhetoric that extremists relied on, creating a cultural atmosphere where anti-Muslim hostility felt acceptable, even patriotic. In this way, the Sinhala movement acted as the soft power backdrop that allowed harder, more aggressive groups to operate with confidence during the Rajapaksha era. Flashpoint 1, the Dambulla Mosque attack, April 2012. A historic mosque in Dambulla, centuries old, became the center of a violent confrontation. Hundreds of monks and lay supporters stormed the mosque during Friday prayers, demanding its demolition. Videos showed monks smashing property, shouting threats, and insisting the mosque was illegal. The government's response? Not arrests. Not condemnation. Instead, officials suggested the mosque should be relocated. This moment signaled to extremists that the state would not stand in their way. Flashpoint 2, the Anuradhapura Shrine Demolition, September 2012. In Anuradhapura, a Muslim dargah, believed to be centuries old, was destroyed by a mob armed with crowbars and hammers. The attack took place in broad daylight. No meaningful legal action followed. These incidents emboldened extremist groups, who now understood that heritage sites, businesses, and even places of worship were vulnerable. Escalation: 538 documented attacks, 2013 to 2015. Human rights organizations and community groups documented over 538 anti-Muslim incidents during this period. These included arson attacks on homes and shops, physical assaults, desecration of mosques, boycotts of Muslim businesses, hate speech campaigns, organized mobs targeting specific neighborhoods. The violence was not random. It was systematic, often coordinated, and frequently preceded by inflammatory speeches from extremist monks. The Aluthkama riots, June 2014, the breaking point. The most violent episode erupted in the coastal towns of Aluthkama, Baruwala, and Durga town. Following a BBS rally, where Ganasara Thero delivered a chilling speech, warning that if a Muslim touched a single Sinhalese, it would be their end, mobs surged into Muslim neighborhoods. The aftermath: at least 4 Muslims killed, 80 injured, including children. Hundreds of homes, shops, and vehicles destroyed. 10,000 people displaced, 8,000 Muslims and 2,000 Sinhalese. Millions in economic losses for Muslim-owned businesses. The riots unfolded over several days. Eyewitnesses reported that police stood by as mobs advanced. Some even alleged that security forces allowed the violence to spread by failing to enforce curfews. Mainstream media coverage was censored following government orders. Political complicity: the silent enabler. Multiple analysts, activists, and international observers argued that the Rajapaksha administration failed to prosecute extremist leaders, allowed hate speech to flourish, used nationalist groups as political tools, benefited from Sinhala Buddhist mobilization. The timing is telling. As international pressure mounted over alleged war crimes, the government leaned heavily on Sinhala Buddhist nationalism to consolidate its base. Extremist groups, in turn, operated with confidence, knowing they were unlikely to face consequences. Human impact: fear, trauma, and economic ruin. For many Muslims, the years between 2009 and 2014 were marked by constant fear of mob attacks, loss of livelihoods, destruction of generational businesses, trauma among children who witnessed violence, deepening mistrust between communities. Entire neighborhoods were reshaped. Some families never returned to their homes. Others rebuilt, only to face new waves of hate in later years. International condemnation: domestic silence. The global community, including human rights organizations and foreign governments, condemned the violence. Yet domestic accountability remained elusive. No major extremist leader was meaningfully prosecuted. No comprehensive inquiry was launched. No reparations were offered to victims. 2015, the political turning point. The Muslim community, long loyal to the ruling coalition, shifted decisively in the 2015 presidential election. Their votes contributed significantly to the defeat of Mahinda Rajapaksa. This was not merely a political shift, it was a survival decision, a response to years of unchecked extremism. Conclusion: a wound that still shapes Sri Lanka. The racial attacks on Muslims during the Rajapaksa era were not isolated incidents. They were part of a systemic campaign, fueled by ethno-religious nationalism and enabled by state inaction. These events left scars that continue to shape Sri Lanka's social fabric. Distrust between communities. Fear of renewed violence. A sense of injustice among victims. A dangerous precedent for extremist mobilization. True healing requires more than political change. It demands legal accountability, protection of minority rights, reform of religious institutions, a cultural reckoning with extremist ideologies. And so, as we turn the final page of this chapter, we confront a truth that refuses to fade. The violence unleashed between 2009 and 2014 was not an accident of history, it was the product of silence, complicity, and a nationalism allowed to grow without restraint. The scars left on Sri Lanka's Muslim community are not just physical, they are wounds carried in memory, in identity, and in the quiet fear that injustice may return if left unchallenged. But remembering is its own form of resistance. To speak these truths, without fear, without favor, is to reclaim the dignity that violence tried to erase. Only by facing what happened in those years can Sri Lanka hope to build a future where no community is targeted, no faith is demonized, and no citizen is left unprotected. Memory is not a burden, it is a responsibility. And this story must be remembered.